Senator Lee.
Judge Jackson seems like a great person. She's got impressive academic and professional qualifications. I enjoyed meeting her husband and her two daughters, and I also just enjoyed visiting with her. I'd love to be able to support her. I can't. The reason I can't has to do with her judicial philosophy, her jurisprudential approach, the manner in which she approaches the judicial task. We've heard from some of my colleagues today about sentences that she's imposed, and I'll not elaborate on that because it's already been covered extensively. But I will add one thing. In these child pornography cases, it wasn't just the sentences that were imposed. Those were troubling. And I will add here, they were ubiquitous. They were in every single case of that category that she ever handled. It becomes impossible to argue that these are statistical aberrations, that they're one-offs, that they're unique in some regard, when every single case that she handled, she imposed a sentence substantially below the national average, substantially below where the guidelines and the law would put them. It wasn't just where she put them and that they were universally low. It was also the explanation she provided for us in response to it. Look, there are a number of factors that have to be considered, factors that are guided by statute, 18 U.S.C. 3553. There are a number of sentencing enhancements that come into play when you're sentencing this type of defendant. Some of them have to do with the number of photos transmitted, whether they were transmitted and received electronically by computer, whether prepubescent victims were involved, whether there was torture, sadomasochistic conduct involved in them. Very often, when you'd read through her sentencing transcripts in these cases, she would more or less sweep all those to the side and either way downplaying them, imposing none of them, or imposing them only to a very slight degree because of the fact that she disagreed with the overall approach taken by the Sentencing Commission, an approach that she said was rooted in the fact that when they wrote the original guidelines, they didn't have in mind widespread electronic transmission. And so to have the same number of photos delivered to someone in hard copy would be more difficult and therefore less common. Somehow she reached the conclusion that that means we should sentence these defendants to lower sentences instead of higher sentences. I read it the exact opposite way. When a particular crime has become more ubiquitous, more common, more easy to carry out, and therefore more pernicious, keeping in mind this is the most vile conduct known to human beings, child sex torture that's then put into a commercialized form, I found her reasoning unpersuasive and circular and not consistent with the law. Now, one of the arguments that she made in addition to that was, well, you can't see all the factors. You don't see all the factors that I took into account, and I can't replicate all those for you because I don't have the pre-sentence reports in front of me. So we asked for those. She said she couldn't get them, which I find surprising because she had information that she provided to the White House provided to the Democrats on the committee, and only the Democrats on the committee until we discovered what had happened. And then we said, okay, if you're going to give some information from the pre-sentence reports, we'd like to have all of it. They refused to allow us access to the pre-sentence reports. Chairman Durbin said, okay, well, we can't give you that because it contains sensitive information, and pre-sentence reports do contain sensitive information. We review sensitive information all the time in this body. We have entire rooms that are set aside for that purpose. We have procedures that are set aside for that purpose. We have significant penalties that would attach any member of this body leaking the contents of those for that purpose. We have the ability to redact out names, personally identifying information involving victims for that very purpose, and yet they wouldn't let us have that. That tells us something. Tells us something that connects back up to the fact that she doesn't want to tell us what her judicial philosophy is, instead saying, look at my record. We look at her record, we can't gain access to all of her record. My concerns with her aren't limited to the criminal realm. I wish they were, they're not. Look at some of the decisions that she made on the civil side. On the civil side, particularly involving administrative determinations made by the Trump administration with which she disagreed. You can think of at least two instances where, as a district judge, she knocked down a Trump administration executive determination and action that she apparently disagreed with politically under circumstances in which there was no viable cause of action and under circumstances in which she lacked jurisdiction. And in both cases, she was overturned, she was reversed by the liberal-leaning U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. These are deeply concerning. They reflect on something very important in our system. We immunize, we take outside of the political realm Supreme Court justices, and we give them presumptive life tenure for a very important reason. But with that comes some real responsibility to operate conscientiously only within the realm of the judicial branch. She's exceeded that far too many times for my comfort. I can't support her.
Senator Graham.